Cosmos, thank you again for joining me here today. And before we're going to start to talk about, the recruitment trends and what's going on, can you tell us a bit about yourself and how did you end up being one of the Kaizen's most successful headhunters?
Well, thank you firstly so much for having me. I realized, many years ago, I realized I was not naturally academic, but I very much enjoyed people. So I left school at a young age, around 15, and I started working, and I kind of took this crazy decision to go to Russia when I was 18. So I spoke no Russian, I didn't know anyone, and got on a plane. And what was meant to be 3 months landed up being 3 years. So I got a degree in Russian as a language. And I realized that, languages don't categorize you, but if people is your area, your thing, then a language fits really well. So after Russia, I went to Japan, studied Japanese, did a postgraduate, and then moved to the Netherlands, where I started headhunting. And I was terrible. I didn't make a placement, and I was like, I just don't get it. How do I do this? And the managing director was a guy called James Darlington, and he said, look, I'm going to teach you. And so every day after work, we would headhunt into the United States. We worked in the World Trade Centers, and him and I together, and he sat and he taught me. And I went from really 1 or 2 placements to becoming the group highest biller. And that was really my kind of forte or entrance into headhunting. And actually it's quite humbling, because I think, as a headhunter, so much of your success is derived from your placements. And of course, if you're, not succeeding and you're not making placements, it can have a real knock-on effect psychologically. So that was it. And from then, it was really my absolute passion. It's what I love. And fortunately, I truly mean this, I've been incredibly lucky to make a career out of my passion.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, I have to say, it's pretty impressive. I encourage everyone to go on Kaizen's website. And you're pretty incredible team of the people. I mean, I'm not even going to talk about that. You're literally a global team that you're placed in different areas, literally of the world. But you're the group of the specialists with really extensive experiences, and I mean, and that's why I was very curious to know about, like, how did you get so much experience from so many different places in today's high-tech, automated, and overqualified age? Can you explain us why it is still so crucial and but even challenging to find the right people?
Absolutely. So I think, recruitment has 2 aspects to it. You have your high street recruiters who actively post a job and they wait for a candidate to come in, and then they introduce that candidate who's looking for a job to a client. What we are is headhunters, where we actively will understand what the client wants, map out the market of their competitors, and find a like-for-like match around the world. And I think the key here is, the question is based on, why can't technology automate a lot of this? And in ways, there are some technologies that can help. But the fundamental here is, you're not dealing with a non-tangible product, you're dealing with a person. And people relate to people. They don't want to be sold an opportunity. They want to know what makes it work for them, but also they want to understand the greater picture for them in their career. I feel, I often do a lot of relocations to the Isle of Man, and it's tough, right? People are like, well, I'm in Malta, and one of the things I would always say is, listen, let me give you the negatives. You may not get a suntan here. However, we have the most incredible way of life. And I think if you can give someone a holistic perspective, what makes something fantastic, and what to be aware of, you get a natural buy-in. And no matter how much technology can automate, and it's a phenomenal for that, the reality is that the people element, that human touch, is something you just can't buy. And I would like to think that in 100 years, someone is looking at this video and saying, you know what, that's absolutely right. That's my feeling on it.
Yeah, so true. I mean, isn't it so interesting that it's no matter how much, and I believe that you meet this a lot at your position, but like it's very interesting that no, it does not even like obviously the salary requirements are very important. The job you got to do is very important, but there's always that element, that human element, and the environment where you're gonna be. What kind of company it is. That it's not just about the work. It's not about the money. That people still tends to think about the lifestyle, the children gonna go in school, or how they're gonna live somewhere with their family, right?
You are so right. I think great recruiters are separated by their ability to listen. It's one thing being able to talk about a job or an opportunity, but what is it in relation to you? Is it that you want a bit more free time? Is it that you want some flexibility because your child goes to school early on a Tuesday morning and you want to work around a schedule? Money is a factor because that's why we work. But often for us as individuals, I think the psychological drive is much more than the money. One of the things that I hear so often is a sense of value, a sense of appreciation. And it's incredible how far that will go. But I think if you are feeling that you're not being appreciated, you're putting in that work, your passion and your love, it is heartbreaking. And actually, no amount of money can fix that. So you're 100% right. The real crux is listening to what resonates with somebody and then presenting it around what it is that they're looking for.
Exactly. And talking about the requirements and the conditions of different, the roles, we know there has been much discussion about the millennials, right? Have a different
Right.
priorities and the work expectations from the Generation X. So could you maybe tell us about that, and maybe what are even your predictions for upcoming Generation Z as they gonna enter the workforce as well?
So it's a really, really good question. So you're absolutely right. The kind of the younger generation, let's take COVID out of it, because I think COVID probably have a bit of effect, but in by and large, there is, a lot of those younger generation never experienced the 2008, 2009 recession, where it was super hard to find a job for anyone. So their perception of the market is very much like I am the driving force. I decide where I go, which is interesting because what you often have is slightly a juxtaposition or opposing position to a hiring manager who's saying, I'm here to teach you, right? Like there's a lot I'm going to pass on to you and learn. So we need to have that balance. I suspect what we're going to see more of is the generations get more technically savvy. It's just a natural thing, and you see like 6 and 7-year-olds working iPads, and you're like, wow, and I suspect what we'll see as we go forward is that level of technical understanding that right now we would consider to be very advanced, I would expect that to become foundational, that to be across all CVs, absolutely expected. How much does that delve into development? I don't think that's the case, but an understanding of development, which is really the underlying of every product, is how it actually works technically. And we're seeing more and more roles where someone's saying it's great that someone understands our product, but their technical level is really important to us, because in order to put that out to a market, whether it's an individual or someone else, you have to have credibility. And credibility is not forged simply on your high level understanding. It's actually taking it right down to be able to speak to those developers, how it's going to integrate, how it's going to manage the data. And I think between that, we'll see more and more of a focus to what is your technical understanding of a job.
Yeah, so right. But even from the personality point of view, do you see like the differences? Like I don't know, I'm just shooting out that like maybe the generation Z, they are easily bored and they are looking for the different qualities in the at the position, like maybe us, or like what are those main differences even like in personalities and like expectations when it comes to like the personal growth.
I think you make a solid point. the level of movement is quite high, and a lot of the time that is because being bored, there's a level of information that wants to come in. What I think our industry does exceptionally well is it takes somebody and says, you know what, let us find a way to keep you inside the business. How do we retain your interest, not only from a career perspective, but we're going to have a spinning class in the afternoon and maybe a yoga class in the morning. And what you do is you transfer this sense of a non-office environment to actually an environment that's recreational, that's creative. And I think if a business can funnel that, you have a very high retention rate. But the firms that struggle to adapt and look at it from that younger generation will long-term could struggle to keep those guys there or entertained and engaged.
Exactly. And, even like from, maybe our parents, the generation of our parents, they had the mindset, it's 9 to 5, this is the work and this is my family, this is the workplace, and that's my private life. I feel like, that the upcoming generation, they want to feel at workplace, but even millennials, I believe, they want to feel as at home in a workplace, in some sense, right?
Absolutely. And you're seeing these initiatives like bring your dog into work. And you're right. How do we make, because I suppose the psychology is quite simple. If I can create an environment that feels like home, there is less of a need to go home and there's more of a want to be there. So it is very much a cyclical cycle where actually the more that we can create that value to you as the individual, the more you're going to want to be here. Therefore, the uptake in production and overall the drive for the business. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think the iGaming industry, the esports industry, definitely is at the forefront of this. I mean, really at the forefront. About 4 years ago, I was invited to Facebook's headquarters in London for a day of meetings. And I looked at the whole place. They took us on a tour at lunchtime. And I remember thinking, it was so advanced at the time. There were a few businesses that had really come into that same space. Now we see movement between the social media firms and the iGaming industry. And actually that cross of going, how can we be different? How can we present something that is a home from home, but breaks all the traditional rules?
Excellent. And we were talking more now about the expectations from us, employees. But what about and we are talking about iGaming. We can talk about the iGaming industry because we know the industry well. So what are actually the traits the top companies are looking for in people? Because we were talking more about the perspective of us, employees. But what about your clients? Like what those top companies are looking for?
So it's really interesting. I believe that there are many things that people are looking for, but I believe there is one thing that trumps everything else. And I believe this is something that cannot be bought, it cannot be paid for, and it's either real or you don't have it. And it is genuine enthusiasm. So everything else we can teach, right? There's so much information to absorb, and someone who's engaged will take it. But that sense of enthusiasm, that sense to want to be there. There was a really interesting study many, many years ago. Google did a study, and what they said is they took 7 members of the public and they watched them interview a candidate. And they had around 30 seconds to see this interview. And the interview would go on and they would just see a 30-second clip, and they would have to decide whether or not the person would be hired or offered the job or not. And the success rate was overwhelming. And what it was that they came back to was that you got this synergistical alliance and connection with someone. And I believe a lot of that, whether you are different walks of life, backgrounds, colors, creeds, the biggest thing is that sense of, I want to be here, that enthusiasm. I think that's absolutely paramount before anything else. The second thing is, and that's shown by things like asking questions. Often people don't ask questions. To have some questions, a great question to be asking in an interview is to say, what quantifies success of the role? So if I'm coming to work for you, how in 6 months do I know I've done an amazing job? What does that look like for you? And you get the hiring manager going, that's such a great question. Let me give you my thoughts. So I think you've got to have that level of enthusiasm. You've got to have a sense of asking questions. But really, one of the things that we recognize is that and this goes to all ages, the want to learn, the want to understand that you are an expert at a certain area of a certain field. And moving a business, they will have a different process. They may have a different product. They may have different markets, and that's going to necessitate a want to learn. And so when you combine those together, whilst capitalizing on your existing experience, I think you have something quite powerful.
Right. I mean, I could not agree with you more. And I think that, I can see that what is very important and what is the trend is that, that people, that the companies want a attitude as you're the partner, like you're the partner, you're my partner, in the business, and what you can offer me and what I can, offer you to make your life better, So I think it's what you mentioned, like the clients actually and employers want to listen, they challenge the people to ask the questions because they want to be in a partnership, right?
Totally. Yeah, I think it's if we go back to kind of the very beginnings of civilization and kind of the kind of cavemen and women days, we wanted to create partnerships, we wanted to create alliances, and so we may do that by the subject we talk about or the background, and fundamentally people want to see that. They want to feel safe that you're someone who's going to take this, work with them, and they believe that you will increase what they have. And I think it's exactly the same as relationship. It is between two people in a business. And if we can get that across, the fact that maybe you don't have a degree, or maybe you don't have 5 years experience when the specification, you've got 4 years experience, it's okay. These things can be worked with, as long as that attitude that comes in is, I'm hungry, I want this, give me an opportunity, let me show you what I can do. And I do mean that works at all levels. It doesn't mean that when you get to a CEO, game's over. And some of the greatest CEOs are some of the most humble people, and they consistently want to learn and improve.
Exactly. And talking about the iGaming industry, what do you think? Where are the most exciting opportunities at the moment when it comes to iGaming industry?
Good question. It's been a fascinating year. We've seen casino go crazy. We've seen sportsbook really struggle. We've definitely seen some really interesting movements in the virtual sports betting side. So from virtual horse racing, we saw Ascot this year was the first time this went up. I have a feeling that that's very likely to grow, and we're going to see more and more products become virtual, so that we have a backup when we have the coronavirus. I think we're seeing an integration of blockchain more and more. There are Bitcoin only companies, again, separate to blockchain, but again, we're seeing a diversity of going, how do we incorporate more players into our business? So countries that, for example, really struggle to do standardized banking, they're looking at going, well, how do we find an alternative for you? And what you do, I think, as a player, is you allow the opportunity for more people to get involved. From a recruitment angle, it's fascinating because it opens up way more doors. You find some businesses start to look at markets they've never considered before, and are finding someone on the ground. So those are the kind of areas that I'm seeing the most kind of dynamism and movement in within the industry.
But as you said, due to COVID-19, many companies, especially sports betting companies, they would not even consider the esports. But because the events, the sports event were all cancelled because of the COVID-19, they had to find the space, and that was the esports scene. And with this explosive growth, esports around the world. You as a headhunter, do you see actually the opportunities already on the commercial business side of the industry? Are there, any recruitment possibilities, coming up?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I've seen two things within esports, and I have to kind of caveat that I'm nowhere an expert at all. I'm learning a lot of it myself.
We all learning. We all.
Yeah, true, right. what I see is the two sides. You have the teams themselves, and you have the businesses behind those that may be taking the bets. And so the businesses themselves are, I definitely think from a recruitment angle, there is a lot there that can be done. There's a lot of value add. The teams has become very specific knowledge. And I think for someone like me, I like to, when I take on a project or work with a client, I want to know that I am completely 100% aware of what they're doing. I have a complete understanding, and that's an area that I don't know enough about. It's something I want to learn. It's something that will go forward. But definitely from the businesses themselves, we have a few esports clients, and they've done fantastically. They've done incredibly well in terms of the investment they've taken on, the way they've built their team. But what's so interesting for us from a recruitment side is the finding the right individuals for them, because it's like and working in a way with a startup, because it's such a new space. So you want that level of creativity. You need someone who's going to be relatively risk open and take this on. But there's an excitement. It's as though there's a natural transition progression from iGaming into esports. Not always, but there seems to be this very, very close synergies. That's what I've been seeing.
Exactly. I think, my prediction, my personal prediction is that it's going to have a trajectory similar to iGaming. It's not going to happen, overnight. It's not going to happen, not even in 1, 2, 3 years. But as in iGaming, 10, 15 years ago, there's no university for the iGaming, There's no, the place who is going to tell you how you're going to do the esport and how you're going to. No, these days, yes, there's more and more the education for the esports, because the kids are really involved. But even back in the days with iGaming, there was no proper education that you would come for interview and you would be like, hey, I am the CRM manager, the CRM casino manager. So I think it's going to be like those companies will spend, a lot of resources and the time to actually educate and to teach the individuals the right candidate, for a job. Obviously, there's going to be some specifications or some, background that the candidate should have. But I think the company is going to learn or going to teach,
I think one of the things we'll see is the key to the success of the industry will be the regulations.
Yeah.
I'm by no means a compliance expert. That's not me, but what we will probably see is that the movement over from iGaming, especially in the compliance and legislative areas, move into esports. And you'll probably see those guys working closely with localized governments as well, because it's new for everyone. There is no precedent to go on. And I think that will be a kind of a meeting of minds. And I suspect it will be an ongoing process. It took many years to get it right. But there are a lot of people that are excited by that. They understand the regulations in gambling. And they go, well, how do we kind of transfer this across? And it's probably going to need to be even stricter because, of course, as you said, a lot of the gamers are actually much younger. And so there's this real balance of how do we put in super safe structure that allows the average person to be able to place a bet, but whilst it doesn't interfere, with someone under 18. And I think there's a really exciting piece there, because that brings in, for the first time, a level of real creativity into an area of compliance, which is fundamentally not a creative field. And so, so there's a kind of, I think it's one of those things when you find the right kind of person, they just resonate, they love it, they bounce and they go, I'm so excited, because it's that outlet that maybe they've never had historically within their career.
Exactly. And talking also about, we previously touched on the COVID-19 and all this, unprecedented times we are going through. So I think that, the readers would really appreciate, maybe you can give advice to those who are trying to build a career during these difficult times. So what would be your advice for those?
What the coronavirus is, in my mind, is it's a level of restriction. It does not mean that things have stopped. It just means we are restricted on what we can do. When we are at a point where we are restricted, growth is very hard in terms of new business, new sales. So we have to kind of look internally and go, well, how do I grow as an individual, as a person? And I believe that the most effective use of the time is to capitalize on those existing skills. How can I become stronger in this area? How can I work on my own personal skills that, yes, I'm not moving up the ranks in the company, and there's very little I can do outside of it, but I am still growing. I think we're made of water, and I think water needs to be moving. It needs to be flowing. And I think our careers and our day-to-day lives are like that. And once we remove that and we stop the learning process, we fundamentally become stagnant. And, you know, where do we go from there? That's not what we want. So I think if someone can capitalize on those existing skills, what courses can I take? What evening classes are there? How can I learn more about the product team? Or I've never really sat with the development team and I have a little bit more time. So I'm going to sit with these guys and understand it. All of these points will be so valuable later on, because you can go back and say, actually, I 360 get the different parts of the business. So if that's an opportunity, and it may not be for some, but definitely to integrate yourselves into the different areas of the team, have a completely holistic overview that you can then later capitalize on once things go back to normal.
Very good answer. And, you know, I would like to touch on very quickly on the remote working as well. So that's also one of the aspects that COVID-19 brought to our lives. And so what's your actually, you know, experience with the companies? They are really open to the remote working, or what's the situation over there?
So it does completely vary by countries. So we cover 9 countries. So we're in 9 countries around the world, and we definitely see a very different attitude to it. For example, our clients in Asia are very much like, we want somebody who's inside the country, and we want someone, we're open to remote, but you've got to be inside the country. So if you're not in, then that's not happening. Part of that is because, you know, the Philippines is locked down. We see a slightly different reaction in Europe. We're seeing businesses say, look, we are open to remote working. We would expect a bit of travel. And then you get the final piece, which is this kind of, we're not really sure. We think we're open to it and potentially it makes sense, but we're also very scared to give you that confirmation that it is okay to do it, because if it doesn't work out, we would prefer you in the office, you know, in that sense of, it, you know, we give someone a sales role, it could be work from anywhere as long as someone's out there and doing it. Whereas, you know, development, it's very important that that team have that level of cohesion. So it becomes very dependent on the role, the country, and again, the market that's being targeted by that business. So it's a tough one. It's really hard. I tell you what is totally true, is the world has become so much more receptive to it. This was not something that, you know, we rarely saw remote roles come up. And we've seen that more and more opening up. And so that gives a lot more flexibility to candidates who go, I love my country, I don't want to move, or I'm living in this place and I don't want to leave it, but this is a perfect role for me. Will that move forward? The reality is really simple. If you consistently can get a result working remotely, then it will be the way forward. But if results are not the same, or production is dropping, then I think companies will rethink it.
Great point, great point. Well, you know, Cosmos, my very last question will be, so what's the plan for Kaizen as an organization in the next few years?
It's a good question. So we are, look, we are the sum of our people, right? We are, I mean, truly blessed to have some extraordinary people. I don't, you know, I often will speak to recruiters and I say, you know, for me, I look for extraordinary people who know how to recruit, as opposed to just a recruiter. And I feel very blessed to have a group around me that I work with that are on it. We're currently in 9 countries. We're coming up to around 20 consultants. Our kind of our growth kind of path is to open up in some more countries. We've never wanted to be a business that had, you know, loads of consultants in one country. We believe in quality over quantity in terms of how we do business, but that philosophy is reflected back into Kaizen. And so for us, it's about finding really quality recruiters who have a real passion for what they do, but bring in a geographical diversity. and that's where we're at. So yeah.
Well, I wish you luck, and I'm quite sure that you're gonna reach your goals. And we're gonna be here to actually map it. And I hope so that maybe 1-2 year we can make like update interview about how's the
I love
situation.
that.
Yeah, how the situation is going. And Cosmo, thank you so much for today and for sharing your insights and opinions. And I think that many people will find it interesting because is it true that the recruitment trends and industry is constantly changing, right? So
Totally.
it's always important to talk about what people want and how their expectations.
100%, and thank you so much for giving me the time and the opportunity to speak to you. I truly, it means a lot to me. And if there's any readers out there or anyone watching the video that wants to connect with me, I'm absolutely available. I work from 9 to 1 a.m. I don't have much of a life, so by all means, don't hesitate to reach out. And if I can answer any questions or help in any way, shape, or form, I'm around.
Thank you. We're definitely going to put your details also in the description when the video will go live. And yeah, I believe that I encourage anyone who's looking for, because as we can say, you're doing it really out of the passion, your job. So you definitely can help the candidate, not like kind of like the strict way, but you can really help the candidates to actually understand what's going to be the best the position for them, right?
100%. I truly believe this. Not everything is about like just taking a candidate, introducing to a business.
Yeah.
If you specialize in an area and you have a level of knowledge that you can give to somebody, that someone who, gosh, that's so useful, even if it's readjusting their formatting on their CV, something as simple as that, then 100%. What are we, if we have the information and we don't use it and don't share that, what good is it? So 100%, yeah.
Exactly. With the small things, we can do the differences, right?
True. Exactly.
Well, Cosmos, thank you so much, and I'm wishing you a lovely evening. And you can jump out. I'm at the moment. I'm actually in Slovenia, so I have just the woods in the front of me. But so I'm quite jealous because I lived in Malta for 7 years. So I wishing you a lovely evening, somewhere close to the sea.
Hey, thank you so much. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful evening here on the Isle of Man. So yeah, and thank you for having me.
So we keep in touch, and thank you again.
For sure.
Bye-bye.
Let's do it. All right. Bye-bye.